I initially wasn't going to do a video on this because there's, you know, about 1 billion YouTube videos on installing heated grips. But I ran into something interesting, so I'm going to do a video. But I'll just, for grins and giggles, we'll kind of go through what I've done so far. But this is the airflow heated grips. The part number is 561000358. 2009 FLSTC Heritage Softail. And quite frankly, I've gotten to the point where, you know, I'm getting ready to wire everything out. But I ran into an issue trying to get into the fuse block. And quite frankly, looking online on the forums and on YouTube, I couldn't find anybody that talked about how to do this. So I thought this was a good time to capture it for a video. But I'm going to do a quick recap of where we're at so far. Essentially what you're going to have is you're going to have the throttle grip is going to have a cable that runs out. It's going to come down through. It's going to come back out the passenger or the left-hand control, and it's going to plug into a connector here. I'll talk real quick about how to take this apart. So what you've got is you want to remove the hand controls. And so these are T25s, these are T20 torqued. So you're going to take those 4 out. There's one under here, there's one here, and then there's 2 there. Take this out. You're going to remove the front brake master cylinder and mirror, and, you know, with a cloth, lay it over. Be careful with it. And then you'll remove this hand control assembly. Now there will be this cable that's going to come in here, and it's tied in here, so you're just going to kind of pull this back and hold it off. Under the bottom, you have the idle and the throttle control devices that come off the cables that come into here. There will be a cable that comes into a brass ferrule that points this way, and one that comes in a brass ferrule pointing this way. If you try to take these out without loosening it, you're going to bend this cable and you're going to cause all kinds of problems. So what you need to do is you need to slide these boots off, and there will be adjuster jam nuts here, and you just screw them all the way down so that they're fully loose, and then screw these all the way down until they're fully down to the bottom. That will give you enough play in that cable to rotate the hand control assembly, module assembly, back around enough to where you loosen enough of this ferrule to remove that throttle ferrule, and then pull it back up this way, and you can release the idle ferrule. And so once that's loose, you can remove the grip, you slide it off, and then on the other side, I was fortunate on this one because the guy already had aftermarket grips on here, so he had already cut it off. But sometimes these are just hard rubber and they're glued on here, so you have to, you know, slice them and pull it off. But this one I didn't have to do that. And then Harley also says to use graphite when you put this back on to make it smooth. I have used that. I just use the silicone lubricant. So, you know, it's nice. Once you have exposure to these inside of the bottom of this hand control module, you'll see where the cable comes out that you took the ferrule off. In the base of this, where the cable goes into this device, you'll see the little opening. They say to just put a couple of drops of this in there while you're in there. Do yourself a favor. It's $5. It's at the parts counter. Part number is 94968-09. Just put a couple of drops in each one of those while you're in there. After you have these out and you put on, you're wanting to put this on, you're going to have to route that cable through here. Now on the Heritage, the handlebars are longer, right? So Harley ships the hand control with one cable that comes out and it sort of stops, but it will never reach the end of this. So they put an extension cable in there that you can plug into the connector and make it long enough so that it will come out the end just enough so that this little plug in here can plug in and then slide on. On this particular setup, the only thing that goes into the handlebars is the actual cable that goes that connects into this. The cable that feeds the power, on the other hand, is going to be routed outside of the handlebars and come down through here. And that's why I removed the tank, because, but the thing too is, I know people are just cringing. You do have to remove the tank if you're going to route this correctly, the way that it goes. But anyway, how do you do this? At Lowe's or wherever, you could get one of these guys. This is a fish tape. Theirs came with this bent over even more into a double, and so I straightened it out. And essentially, you know, you just pull this out. This is just metal. And I got this kind of flat so that you can just push it through the handlebars. If you need WD-40 or something like that, you can use that, you know, if it's really tough. But this will eventually, you know, as you go through, pull it back out the other end, then you're going to, you know, hook a piece of electrical tape here. I just put the basically the end right here and hooked electrical tape to it. And pulled it through. Now, unfortunately for me, there was a lot of corrosion in the handlebars, and so I actually, first time, pulled the connector off of all things. No harm, no foul. Basically went in and clipped the connectors on the extension cable, soldered the joints together, used heat shrink on the joints, and then took the plastic shielding stuff that they have around the cable, went around the junction point of that, and then put zip ties on either side, only connecting to this, right? Because that's where the force is. You don't want it on your solder connections. But little bitty, teeny tiny zip ties. And then when I tied this to the end of it, I didn't have a connector, so I basically just created a loop on the actual cable itself, so pulled one of the ends back, and then, you know, electrical tape here and electrical tape here, and then pulled this back through and out, and then removed the electrical tape and pulled the little piece straight out, and I was good to go. I still had the connector on this side, though. That's important. I didn't cut this connector. I cut the one where the extension cables joined to each other and created my own bond that joined in there. Okay. Once that's on, again, same thing here with removing this, right? Two T25s, two T20s, one here, one there. This comes off. You just, you know, connect the thing in there, slide this back in. You're going to have some work to do here to kind of make sure that this comes up out of the way so that these actually will join correctly. And then if you look at the instructions, it'll say to just go across the bottom and then come back up and tie in and start going down. And so that's where we're at. That's catching you up on that. The only other thing I want to mention is, you know, a lot of guys would probably get to the point where they start to put these, tighten these guys back up, and they're going, well, the hell was it adjusted? This really isn't all that bad. All you got to do is, reduction module under here, you will see, let me get that a little close here, and you'll see this little guy. And as you pull this back, it has what's called a cam stop. And so this hits this piece back here, and that's where it stops. So with everything fully loosened and the front wheel pointing straight, you basically go to full throttle on, and then you begin to tighten the throttle control when at the handlebar, just where this begins to hit this. As soon as it starts to hit that, stop. Then come back up and do another half to a full turn this way. The book just says half to a full. I just kind of did in between. It seemed to be fine. And then the next thing is you turn the steering wheel full right, and you start to tighten the idle up. It says until this cable touches the spring, but quite frankly, I think these are so old, I never could see that. I kept looking, but I couldn't ever get it. So I just kept working it until this had a nice pop and it went back to normal. So I think we're fine there. We'll find out when I fire it up. If not, I'll readjust that. And so, but on to the show of what we need to do. So what you'll have is you'll have 3 cables that are coming off of this. Let me grab this one. So you will have black. Okay, that's obviously going to the negative terminal on the battery. You're going to have red. That's going to go to the positive terminal on the battery. And then you're going to have this one, which is orange and white. Now this one's going to go to accessory. So that's when the bike, you know, if you turn the bike off and you accidentally leave your heated grips on, it will not be on, right? So the accessory is turned off. So it's kind of important to have it this way so you don't run your battery down. But what this guy does is these run, and again, I took the tank off, but they'll run down the main harness and they will come back down into here. And we'll go to the battery here and here, all right? But what you're doing is you're going to want to wire in this orange and white cable, and that's the reason that I'm showing this video. You have to take this little extension cable that they give you in the kit and cut one of the connectors off, and then the other end has a little spring joint that's going to go into the unused size of this accessories fuse block here where the number 2 is, because I've already done this. And so this little guy, you basically look at the orientation of the other ones, but it just goes in there and click on one side of this, and then you have a fully functioned junction box for the fuse where you'll put this 2-amp fuse for the heated grips. Now, here comes the fun part. Again, there was no video on this, so I was just trying to figure out how to do this because it's just crazy. I'm going to walk through the steps real quick, but I'm going to show the magic of this because there's really nothing out there that talks about this that I can find, even in the service guide. What you'll want to do is you'll want to move the ECM connector, remove the battery, remove the main fuse, and remove the CAN bus. And this guy just basically slides back over a knob that's on top of here at the end. So this little junction here slides off, and then you go up, pull up and out, pull the CAN bus off, pull the main fuse out of this block assembly. And then you will have 2 nuts here that you'll need to remove, or 2 bolts that you need to remove here. Pull those out. And then you go start scratching your head going, okay, how the heck do I get this out any further? There's a couple of things that you need to do. One of them is there will be a zip tie that runs right down the middle of this. You'll need to clip that and pull that out, and you can see where it goes through there. Now the question is, how do you put that back on without taking off the fender and the rear tire? Good question. Maybe I'll do that one day when I have the rear tire off, but right now I'm not going to do it when I put it back on because it's going to be a pain in the ass. You will have these ribbed pieces that are coming out here on either side that hold this piece, this bracket, onto this. And so what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to push this away from that assembly so that these disengage. And you don't need to crush these. You don't need to pull them with a plier. You just basically just keep pushing on them, and they'll pop out eventually. And then when you put them back on, you just pop them back into the holes. Once you do that, you begin pulling this up. There's some notches that it slides into down in here, and this takes a little bit of working it back and forth to eventually get it out. But and you got to be careful because this piece will bend. This is flimsy metal, but you keep working it, and it will eventually pull out. Well, then you start saying, okay, well, how the heck do I get these blocks off of this piece here? This is the magic trick, in my opinion, because it's not listed anywhere. If you can see behind the block, there is a piece of metal with an indent that is pushed in with a screwdriver, and that is actually holding the block assembly into this metal piece. Once you take a pair of pliers or something and get this thing flush with here, then it will slide, the rails will slide down and go through these big holes and pop this thing out. And then, you know, once it's popped out, then you're able to get in here and actually do what they're telling you to do, which is to push that orange and white spring clip up into this point and then you will have this junction point that you're going to end up either using their crimpers. I'm a solder guy. I'm going to solder and heat shrink that back to the orange and white cable that comes from the grips. Once you do that, then this basically just slides back into those slots. Click, push this piece back out so that it holds it in place. Put that back down, put the screws back in, put it all together, dress your wiring up, and make sure you have a clean run. So anyway, I hope this helps somebody else. I sat here and fought with this thing for an hour. Finally figured out how to get this thing out so that you can do this. I've read guys on the internet that said they didn't even take it out. They just found a way to push this up in there and make it click. More power to you. I just don't have that kind of patience. I wanted to actually see how this got taken apart. So that's how you do it. And so I'm getting ready to button her up. Just a quick walk around, kind of show you what I've done. But so, you know, the cable's routing up under here. These are new clips that are supplied in the kit down to here. I routed through that hole there, came around through here, zip tied there with the ones they provide in the kit, ran underneath the tank sock, went across the top line, you know, new zip tie, routing through underneath this carriage unit. So this just pops out, so you can see that, but that's all that does. And then once I transgress through here, then I begin slowly coming underneath the main wiring harness. This is rubber that protects that. Underneath the clamp for the negative battery terminal. This is just a common ground for the chassis in these models. Once I got to this point, I clipped the cables, removed the jacket, just spun around with the negative wire here, put in one of those ring outlets that they provide in the kit, and grounded here. Continued on, split off. Now red, I'm going to have to come back and put this back in line with that. This is another fuse. Highly recommend you put that back. But I'll put that back here, and then I'll have another ring that comes off to the positive battery terminal. And then I put in another sleeve over the orange and white, routed down through here underneath, use this cable tray as it goes underneath, back down, soldered the junction point with the orange and white cable to the one that's coming out of the fuse box that I added. There's the 2 amp fuse, and then, like I said, a little spring clip that goes in there. The white orange bar came out. Soldered those together, heat shrink, and then I also put electrical tape on it just because I'm anal. Routed that back in through the plastic caddy to keep it out of the way, and back up into this tray. And so that keeps it nice and clean. And again, you slide this back in. There's some ears behind here that you slide the clips, this piece into, secure it with the 2 bolts, and then those little you can't see them from in here, those little rib connectors, and you just pop those back on here. And then, of course, there's the tie wrap that goes around the middle if you're the type of person that wants to get in there. Like I said, it'll be one day when I take the fender off, or the tank, or the rear wheel before I do that, because you just can't get to it. So anyway, at this point, what I'm going to do is put the battery back in, connect all this back up, put the main fuse back in here, and this just goes into the side of the cover that goes on top of here, and then, you know, hook up the battery, put the tank back on, and see if our hands are warm. And that's it. Okay, one more. After reviewing the instructions, I wanted to put this in here. Quite frankly, I'd probably just tie this to here, but the instructions said that there's an unused connector in here, and they provided this nifty little connector in the kit with the red wire. If you look in this channel right here, there is a red wire and this little connector right here. So that's what they want you to do from the plant. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make use of this, even though it adds more wiring in here, but I've got zip ties, I can deal with that. We're going to trim this down so that I don't have so much wire. We're going to fuse this together, solder it, put on some heat shrink, tie it in, and then plug this little puppy into that, and that way it's done the way they say it should be done. So, and then that should be it. I don't know about you, but I particularly despise when people make YouTube videos and they don't show how they ended up routing something. So for completeness, I'm showing this. So what I did was, we talked about hooking this connector in. So this wire runs across here, attached the connector, and then I ran the wire from that connector through here, along this edge, comes out here. All right, then I bunted or soldered that wire into the actual fuse block for that. This is a 4-amp fuse, by the way. Heat shrink, and then I had to cut the jacketing, so I zip tied that back together for extra protection. And then on this side, I essentially took that red cable and I put another jacket on it, and I ran it down underneath this, and then I came in and did the same thing. So I soldered this and heat shrink, and then jointed the butt of the things, and left the fuse sitting here. So it's easy to get to, but also I have the battery tender that has this stupid fuse on it too, which really cuts your amount of storage space that you have under here. So I can leave that one up here and then have this one back here. So that'll work out great. And then the other thing too is I've got this brake light flasher module that I'm going to have to probably work into here and seal that up when I get that done. And then I think that's it. I think we're done at this point.